Your brain is designed to find meaning in astrology, even when there is none. But here's what's fascinating. Even if astrology isn't real, that doesn't mean that it doesn't work. If you have ever read a horoscope and thought, wow, this is scarily accurate, that's not astrology proving itself, but it's your brain processing information that make it feel true. I've spent years studying the brain, and what I'm about to show you explains why astrology has such a strong hold on us. And it's all happening here. So today we are breaking down the scientific truth behind astrology. We will go through how celestial bodies actually affect you, what neuroscience says about belief, and why astrology has evolved in the way it is today. But before we dive in, if you're new here, hi there, I'm Yvette. I'm a neuroscientist and an author of several neuroscience studies. On this channel, we explore the brain, decode its mysteries, and apply neuroscience to our everyday life. So, if this sounds like your kind of thing, I would encourage you to hit the subscribe button. And in the meantime, let's get started. Astrology isn't just entertainment. It shapes how people see themselves, their relationships, and also their future. Its credibility doesn't come from the stars, but it comes from how our brain processes patterns and constructs meaning. Early civilizations relied on celestial cycles to predict the seasons. For example, if birds started to migrate, winter followed. Of course, that wasn't superstition. It was pattern recognition at its best, serving as a survival mechanism. But is astrology a bogus pattern recognition? The answer may surprise you, because there have been scientific studies, such as this one, which showed that the season of birth determines your personality. However, this has nothing to do with astrology. It's about prenatal environment, such as sunlight exposure, vitamin D levels, and seasonal illnesses. So the question that pops up here is, could this be why some astrological traits feel true? And this wouldn't be due to the stars, but more due to biology. Ancient cultures looked at the stars not just for survival, but also for meaning. When life felt unpredictable, celestial patterns provided a sense of control over the unknown. This may also explain why astrology feels so comforting today, as it taps into our innate need to make order out of chaos. However, astrology might be more scientific than initially thought. The moon already affects us. It controls the tides and also influences our circadian rhythms. In fact, some studies, such as this one, show that people sleep worse during full moon, possibly due to melatonin production. Could this actually explain the mood shifts linked to astrology? Maybe. Additionally to this, some argue that the planetary alignments could influence the body due to gravity. But here's the catch. The gravity of this chair that I'm sitting on affects me more than the gravity of Mars. So while gravity shapes planets, it seems implausible that it is shaping our personalities. However, research studies showed that solar storms and geomagnetic activity affects your psychology. And this includes mood and aggression. For example, studies found that during periods of high solar activity or geomagnetic storms, mental health-related hospital visits increased. So while scientists have actually studied whether celestial bodies influence human psychology, there is still no evidence that Uranus controls your destiny. Yeah, I know. Tragic, really. But if astrology isn't scientifically proven, why does it feel so real? And for this, let's move to neuroscience. Remember in the beginning of the millennium when NASA released some photos of the surface of Mars? Basically, the internet exploded because people saw what looked like a face on Mars. Suddenly, theories about ancient alien civilizations started to emerge. But later images revealed the truth. There was no actual face. It was just an illusion created by shadows on rock formations. And well guys, this is a perfect example of how our brains perceive a pattern where there exists none. Our brain is a pattern recognition machine, and it is constantly looking for connections. This phenomenon is called apophenia, and it helps explain why horoscopes feel accurate. For example, ever read a horoscope and thought, wow, that is totally me? That is actually your brain searching for familiar patterns while ignoring the rest that doesn't match. And of course, horoscopes use vague wording, which makes it easier to interpret it in a way that feels personal. This is confirmation bias in action. It happens subconsciously. And as Daniel Kahneman describes it in his book Thinking Fast and Slow, this is an error from System 1 thinking, which is when the brain takes a shortcut not to waste time. With this in mind, some people trust their gut, while others rely on logic. And the intuitive brain loves astrology because it provides a quick, emotionally satisfying explanation. For example, imagine you're feeling down and you read a horoscope that says you have been struggling, but don't worry, soon things will take a turn. And instantly, you will feel relieved. The analytical brain, on the other hand, asks for evidence. But hey, even the skeptics can fall in this trap. Because hey, Mars is in retrograde, but soon enough, the sun will enter our sign, right? This intuitive versus analytical divide plays into a deeper cognitive mechanism, which is the default mode network. The DMN is the brain's self-reflection and storytelling hub. It connects the dots in our lives, even when those are random. Astrology feeds into this mechanism by providing a pre-made story for us to interpret. For example, I'm a Taurus, and so I am naturally stubborn. And even if it is just self-perception, it feels true because the DMN weaves it into our personal identity. Another reason why astrology feels real? Well, it's because we're addicted to it. And that's because of dopamine, the brain's reward chemical. If you are interested in learning more about the brain's reward system, I talk about this in a short video over here. I put it somewhere up here, so if you want, you can check it out later. So anyway, when something feels true, our brain reinforces it by releasing dopamine. The more we get rewarded for a belief, the more we trust it. For example, someone reads the horoscope that says you will meet someone very important today. Later, they talk to a coworker and can think, ooh, is this that person? And boom, dopamine is released. And remember, dopamine is not just for reward, it also drives addiction. The more of it is released, the more of it we crave. And since we're talking about dopamine, one of the brain areas which is affected by it is the amygdala. This brain region processes emotion like fear and anxiety. And when a belief triggers a strong emotional response, the amygdala is activated. And in doing so, it gets hardwired in our memory. This is why people remember when astrology was right, however they forget when it was wrong. Astrology has been around for thousands of years, evolving across civilizations. But why has it survived for so long? And what does science say about it? One of the most fascinating things about astrology is that it developed independently across many civilizations. The Babylonians, Egyptians, Chinese, and Mayans all developed their own astrological systems before they even had any contact with each other. Why? Because humans always looked at the skies for meaning. For example, early civilizations didn't use just the stars for navigation, but also for storytelling. Constellations became myths, tying celestial events to human emotion, like the Greeks who saw Orion as the hunter in the skies, or the Chinese who have the lunar zodiac. Ancient astrology was a predictive tool, used for war strategies, agriculture, and leadership decisions. Today, on the other hand, astrology has shifted to focus on self-discovery and personality. While we no longer turn to the stars for survival, we still turn to them for meaning. Astrology fell out of favor with the rise of science. However, nowadays, it is again booming. Thanks to social media, meme cultures, and astrology apps, a new generation is embracing astrology for fun and identity. It's not just about belief, it's about self-expression and individualism. However, despite astrology's growing popularity, scientific research has repeatedly debunked its claims. For example, studies testing horoscope accuracy found that people cannot tell the difference between their zodiac reading and any other random reading. In fact, identical twins often have the same birth chart. However, yet sometimes their lives unfold in totally different ways. If astrology had real predictive power, would this still be the case? And on top of all of this, your star sign isn't actually what you think it is. Due to the Earth's wobble, the zodiac calendar is off by approximately a month. So, if you were born a Libra, you're actually a Virgo. Oops. However, even though I've said all of this, does it even matter if astrology isn't true? Even if astrology astrology isn't scientifically valid, it is providing meaning to many people. If something gives comfort and guidance, does it really need to be true to be actually valuable? Humans have always been drawn to the mystical and unexplained. Whether it's astrology, religion, or philosophy, we crave for narratives that help us understand ourselves. Maybe astrology doesn't control our fate. However, the way we interpret it absolutely does. The Neuroscience of Astrology explains why this ancient system is still compelling, even in an age that is driven by science. And at the end of the day, maybe we just love to believe in something bigger than ourselves. As we have seen today, astrology exists in a grey area, leaving us to rely on gut feelings. But here's the thing, not everything that sounds like pseudoscience actually is. Take this for example. Exposing people to 40 Hz sounds has been shown to reduce Alzheimer's symptoms. Sounds unbelievable? Well, that's exactly why you should check this video out, where I break down multiple neuroscience studies describing this phenomenon, including some clinical trials. And with this, thanks for watching, and see you in the next one. Ciao!